I like to share with you the story of someone who has had a profound impact on my life. Identify her as Janet. Our story starts in our early childhood. Janet and I initially crossed paths in middle school, when we were both about 10 years old. We grew up in the same little town and attended the same classes. We were close friends in those early years, but there was never a romantic spark between us. Janet was still a fantastic friend, but nothing more. My heart was with someone else. When we started high school, our lives' course drastically changed. All of our lives were cast in a gloom by the arrival of COVID-19 in our 11th grade. But Janet's was particularly turbulent. As you might guess, it was a very difficult moment for her to lose her father. This personal tragedy made the already depressing world even more unbearable for Janet. She stopped participating in everything. She seldom ever attended our online classes and hardly spoke to anyone. I recall choosing to reach out one day. It has to do with an assignment or some other boring schoolwork. I can't remember the specifics. What I do recall is that this unassuming act set off an unforeseen chain of events. Our little conversation extended into a lengthy, jovial, and light-hearted discussion. During my 6 years of knowing Janet, this particular talk felt like a turning point. We seemed to have finally found a deeper connection at that point, and our conversations turned into a daily routine. As we approached our final year together, I became aware that my feelings for Janet had deepened. It seemed as though she might have felt the same way about me as I did about her. We shared a kind of mutual understanding, an unseen connection that got stronger every time we chatted. Our high school graduation celebration was a memorable occasion. Even though it wasn't a prom, it was a noteworthy occasion. I danced with Janet, we took tons of adorable photos, and we just enjoyed each other's company all night long. We still treasure those memories, which are captured in the pictures we took and the times we spent together. But like many love tales, ours had its share of obstacles. With college just around the corner, I had to make a difficult choice. My parents were relocating to a different state in order for me to pursue my career ambitions in a better program at the college where they were working. I made the decision to depart with a sad heart and an eye toward the future. We were going to make a big change in our relationship, and I was really sad about leaving Janet behind. I announced that I will be going away in a month on my 18th birthday. Not only did Janet react differently to the news, but so did everyone else. We had a birthday/farewell celebration, and Janet gave me a card to open following my final examinations. However, I opened it the day I received it since I was impatient. There was a sentimental note and a picture from our high school reunion inside. Janet wrote about how much she loved our chats, how I had helped her through COVID, and how she would really miss me. In retrospect, I wonder whether there was more to the note than the final "love you," which I took to be friendly. My main concern as the days went by was getting ready for college and packing. I had one final meeting with everyone at a cafe 2 days prior to my departure. It was a happy occasion with lots of good vibes and best wishes for the future. Janet and I had a talk on our way out that I will never forget. I said that I was surprised by how close we had gotten by this point and pondered what would have happened if I had stayed. Janet took my hand with a lovely smile on her face. She reassured me that everything would be all right, and that, considering our goals for the future, whichever choice I made was the right one. We said our goodbyes with hugs, and as I drove back home, I had a knot in my throat. I really wanted to kiss her, but I refrained. It had been 2 years since my departure. My career path is moving along as expected, and college has been a whirlwind of adventures. It's a wonderful chance for me to be going to the UK for my master's next year. I constantly struggle with the thought that I ought to have stayed with Janet, though, in spite of all the improvements and changes. My mother has said that she would have urged me to stay if I had told her how I felt. It's a difficult realization to let go of Janet, since it's bittersweet. Since my departure, we have messaged each other a few times, but because everyone is preoccupied with college, our chats frequently seem a long way off. Although I accept and understand this new stage in our lives, a part of me longs for the past. We're always reminded of what may have been by the photo of us from that high school party. Although I know that I will eventually move on, there is a part of me that finds it difficult to let go. My sincere and pure feelings for Janet taught me that true love is not just fueled by physical attraction, but also by a person's true nature. Janet demonstrated to me that genuine bonds can develop in the most unlikely circumstances, and that, on sometimes, love is more about the time spent together than the amount of time spent together. As time passed, my recollections of high school were more distant from me as life progressed. However much time passed, Janet would not leave my thoughts. I couldn't help but wonder how she was doing, whether she was thinking of me every time I overcame adversity or rejoiced in a triumph. One evening, while I was preparing for my final exams and boarding a plane to the UK, I received a message from Janet. It all started with a "Hey, how are you?" It was clear-cut and concise. But it seemed like a lifeline, even with all the years and distance separating us. We had a brief conversation during which we caught up on each other's life. Janet had begun her own career as a local teacher in our community. As I had unknowingly helped her through those difficult high school years, she informed me she liked helping youngsters navigate the problems of growing up. After our talk, I was itching to see her again and talk about the emotions I had been trying so hard to hide. I found myself thinking more and more about returning home instead of heading to the UK. Maybe this time, I would have the courage to express what had always gone unsaid. I had my opportunity when I chose to spend the holidays at home. Janet and I made plans to meet at our old cafe when I got in touch with her. Walking into that familiar spot and seeing Janet waiting for me gave me the impression that I had journeyed back in time. Even though she seemed to have aged with time, her kind face stayed the same, giving me comfort. We conversed for hours, pondering over the past, assessing the present, and projecting the future. As the evening drew to a close, I realized this was my chance. I leaned across the table, met her hand in mine, and met her gaze. "Janet, there's something I've wanted to tell you for a long time," I began, a little wobble in my voice. I should have spoken out years ago, but I refrained out of fear and a desire to preserve what we had. She gave me a little push while holding my hand. "Janet, you motivate me. Perhaps I always have. One of the hardest things I've ever done was leave you, and every day since then, I wonder what may have been." For a moment, I assumed the worst as Janet's tears glimmered in her eyes. Then she smiled, the same smile that had always given the impression that all was ok. In a whisper, she said, "I love you too. I'd always hoped you'd come back and say that." As we sat there, holding hands across the table, I realized that no matter what lay ahead, whether in the UK or back in our hometown, what really important was the unsaid but never forgotten love that had blossomed between us. And that's when I realized I had finally had the guts to follow my intuition.